Welcome to the Fantasy Syndicate Podcast with your hosts, Joshua Poniatowski and Alex Taylor. Let's talk football.
Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Syndicate Podcast. My name is Josh Poniatowski. I am again riding solo for this episode. This is my second week doing start-sit advice. Of all the content we create, this one probably takes the longest because I really got to do a deep dive on literally every single game and matchups and injuries and really everything else that goes into knowing all 32 NFL teams front and back. If you like this and you think it's valuable, please, give it a like or subscribe. It just lets me know that you think it's worthwhile for me to continue. I'll jump into it. We had a crazy week one. First of all, everyone always overreacts to week one. So just don't be that person. Stay composed, but also don't just blindly ignore things. So, just a little bit of both. Last week I had some misses, but I did also have some hits. I'm a firm believer in making the decisions that you feel is right as a manager, even if it's a gut thing. I will continue to do these start-sit videos if you find value in them. But remember, trust yourself, go with your guys, and make the decision that's best for you. It is your team. Always go with your gut and go with your guys. All right, let's roll into it. The first game up for this week is the Thursday night game. It is the Commanders versus the Packers. The over-under for this game total is 48 points. The Commanders are projected to score right around 22.5 points, and Green Bay is favored and projected to score right around 25.5 points. This is essentially the second highest point total of the week. We're expecting a shootout in here. It's not a 50-point total like we saw with the Bills and the Ravens last week from a projection standpoint, but it's very high, especially, being at Lambeau, which makes sense why the Packers are favored. For the Commanders, Jayden Daniels is an obvious start, but the other players honestly aren't so cut and dry for me because of Jayden Daniels' rushing upside. His teammates have to either be very efficient on their opportunities or they need to score touchdowns. Last week, this is very important, the wide receiver room rotated consistently. Terry and Deebo were obviously the top guys in the rotation, but I think it was 3 or 4 other guys rotated in to take many of the other snaps. Deebo Samuel, Scary Terry, Bill, and Zach Ertz all have the potential to score a touchdown every single week. The question is that we find ourselves asking is who's going to be that person? Even in a shootout, I'm a little bit worried about this situation with how many playmakers they have. This is some of the data. He only played 40% of 12 personnel sets, which is 2 wide receiver sets. Terry was also only in on 58% of those 12 personnel or 2 wide receiver sets. So I think this is the type of game where you can make your own decision. For me, I'm probably going to go with Scary Terry in this situation. Deebo does play very well against higher zone defenses, which the Packers like to focus on. And there's a give and take for both of them. I'm going Scary Terry if I had to start one of the two, but both could be started, honestly, based on your situation. It's just a scary situation in Washington with that rotation that we saw in week one. Similar to those two, I am on the fence with starting Bill. I do see him as a low-end running back 2, a flex play. He has touchdown upside because of the high scoring. In week one, he ended up eventually taking over all early down work, short yardage work from Ekeler, Chris Rodriguez with a healthy scratch. So all of those rumors were unimportant. The reason why I'm on the fence with him a little bit is because the Packers just got done stopping Gibbs and Monty and the Lions for a total of 46 rushing yards. And Washington has a worse offensive line than the Lions do. I'm adding Bill to my fringe starter list, again, based on situation. Moving over to Ertz, I'm benching Zach Ertz. I'm going to continue to bench him. I know he had a touchdown last week, and he was viable as a tight end. But again, he is the 3rd or 4th option on this team. He's going to be highly touchdown dependent really every single week. And I think there's other better tight end streaming options out there. Moving over to the Packers, Jordan Love is on my streaming quarterback list. I am starting Josh Jacobs, and if I need a streaming tight end, Tucker Kraft is also added to that list. Last week, Tucker Kraft was the number one receiver in routes run and offensive snaps. Everybody else on the Packers outside Jacobs, Jordan Love is a potential streamer, and Tucker Kraft as a streaming tight end if needed are on the bench. And it's because we saw exactly what we did in 2024. I think all of us were holding out and hoping that Matthew Golden could end up becoming that alpha. We just haven't seen it happen yet. I'm not giving up on Golden just yet, but it didn't look good. It was a rotation of almost everybody for the most part. I'm just staying away from that for right now. We have the Browns versus the Ravens. The over and under total for this week is 44.5 points. Cleveland is projected to score an abysmal 16.5 points. Baltimore is projected to score a massive 28.5 points. For the Browns, this should be another game that favors a heavy passing script. The thing is, we have to be much more careful with our starters on the Browns because coming into this year, we thought that we knew Jeudy was alpha wide receiver number one and Njoku was the number two option, or vice versa based on which game it was. We thought they were going to see a huge volume. That didn't happen. We saw so much of spreading the love approach, and maybe this has to do with a little bit of Joe Flacco, maybe offensive scheme, but we saw much more receiving weapons in the mix in this offense. It's not pushed by volume anymore. We have to be more specific. Jeudy and Cedric Tillman were almost identical in opportunities, not just from targets, but from offensive snaps and route run. David Njoku and Harold Finn Jr. also had very similar roles, much closer than most had predicted. And because of this, the Ravens having a much better secondary and a run-focused game script, I am benching all Browns players. I know it's hard to say, but I'm benching all Browns players because of the Ravens' much better defense, as well as the game script that we expect to go in this game. The spread situation that we saw in week one, if that continues, there might not be a guy who gets heavy volume. You could make a case literally for any pass catcher, though. So if you're like, oh, I want to start Jeudy because I think he's going to get a bunch of volume, or Cedric Tillman, or David Njoku, or Harold Finn Jr., like you could literally make a case for probably all of those. You could also make a case for probably Dylan Sampson to take dump offs because of how efficient he was with his receiving options last week. And he is the running back one essentially on that team. Anything can happen, but again, I'm just benching all these guys simply because of the situation. If Harold Finn Jr. is not rostered in your league, he needs to be rostered. He could literally become a top 5 tight end overnight simply due to the volume that he's seeing, the slot role that he's playing. If anything happens to him, just keep an eye on him. Moving over to the Ravens, there's not going to be a lot of surprise here, but Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are obviously getting the start. Zay Flowers is also getting the start for me simply because he should be the main target guy. I still look at him as a wide receiver 3 and flex option. They're not going to see 80-point shootouts every week, but he falls into that start category. Rashod Bateman and D-Hop are both bench candidates for me. In a game that the Ravens should control most of the time, these two just seem too touchdown dependent for me to start. It pains me to say this about Mark Andrews' tight end position, but I am very worried, and I would bench Mark Andrews this week. I thought with the Likely injury, he would see an increase in opportunities. Every time Likely went down in 2024, Andrews shot up to about 80% offensive snap count range, 70 to 80%. Well, that didn't happen in week one. It really didn't matter. He saw a 50% offensive snap share, and he rotated with literally all the other tight ends. Of everything that happened in week one, I know I told you not to freak out, but this is truly the one I'm most worried about. Until we see something different, I just don't feel confident rolling him out as my tight end one. I would stream a couple of these tight ends that we're going to talk about here for this week over him. He is touchdown dependent. They do plan to score a lot of points, so maybe he gets one. I'm just not willing to bet on Mark Andrews this week, unfortunately, because of that rotation that we saw in week one. Moving over to the Panthers versus Cardinals. The over-under total for this game is 44.5 points. Carolina is projected to score a very low 18.5 points. Arizona is projected to score 26.5 points. I am benching everyone on the Panthers except for Chuba and Tet. So Chuba Hubbard and Tet McMillan are both guys that I'm starting. Last week, I was worried about Chuba losing opportunities to Rico. Well, I was wrong. Again, it happens. I'm sorry that I was wrong. The guy who commented, good take, by the way, in the comments. So appreciate y'all giving feedback. And, you nailed it, which is fantastic. I do think a 30-yard dump off to him did save his fantasy day with that touchdown reception. But his opportunities were similar to last year, which that is what we're looking for. He had a very small opportunity downtick. It was almost identical. He saw the large amount of opportunities on early down, short yardage, 2-minute drill, goal line. Rico did play every third down snap, though, so that receiving upside, he's no longer playing third down snaps. The Cardinals do have a suboptimal defensive line, and Chuba should honestly just see plenty of opportunities and be fantasy relevant. So I am starting him this week. And same with Ted McMillan. As far as he goes, he's going to be consistently peppered with targets. Honestly, if Bryce Young can just figure it out, like throw this man a catchable ball and he will make a play. Ted secured 5 of 5 targets last week. He's an elite talent. He's going to be propped up by volume unless Bryce Young gets better, but he is definitely a starter, and I'm benching all the other guys. As far as the Cardinals go, the Panthers have one of the worst defenses in the league. I'm starting Kyler Murray, James Conner, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Trey McBride. And when I mean I'm starting them, I mean I have all 4 of these guys on one team. I stacked it up big this year, which was crazy in one of the leagues, but it just happened to fall that way. Probably going to look to move one of them, but at least for these first couple weeks, it's been juicy, especially with the Panthers and Saints in week 1. By everything we've seen out of the Panthers, their history, their defense, the entire Cardinals team should do very well. I am benching everybody else, though, because no one else really should see the ball enough to be considered relevant. Those other 4 guys, I'm firing up for sure. Moving over to the Broncos versus the Colts. With the Colts, they just shot out of a cannon, and they look like the best players that you have bought on the cheap in Fantasy League. If you own these guys, you got to be feeling good in week 1. Week 2, though, should really be the test on how good this Colts team is and what we should see moving forward. And the Broncos, like we talked about last week, have one of the best defenses in the league. Because of this, I am only starting Jonathan Taylor, and yes, I am starting Tyler Warren. We just needed one game, and I saw what I needed to see, honestly. Tyler Warren will see plenty of opportunities to be relevant. Warren played only 1 less snap out of the slot than Josh Downs did. And this was a huge reason why I was down on Warren, was because I didn't think he was going to get the slot opportunities because Josh Downs is just such a great slot guy and so effective at it. But that didn't happen. Warren was put into slot, got those opportunities as much as Josh Downs did. At this point, I'm feeling confident starting him as a tight end, even against a solid Denver defense. Michael Pittman Jr., I know he was peppered with targets. He did fantastic last week, but he should be pedoed by Patrick Surtain. Surtain saw a league-low 11% target share in 2024. Last week, Surtain had 1 target thrown his way. If Pittman is shadowed by Surtain, Daniel Jones would be literally looking the other way all game. You're going to see this as a trend with Surtain, even against potential elite receivers. So I'm benching Pittman this week. You got to have better options, especially at where he went as ADP. I'm also benching Josh Downs because Warren is now eating into his opportunities, which we saw in week 1. Alex Pierce is nothing more but a lotto ticket at this point. He's also getting benched for me. Moving over to the Broncos, I am starting Bo Nix and Courtland Sutton. J.K. Dobbins is also a fringe starter for me. Last week, J.K. was the main running back in early down and short yardage opportunities, which is why I encouraged J.K. over R.J. R.J. Harvey was closer to actually Tyler Batty for offensive opportunities than J.K. Good thing is that R.J. dabbled a little bit in every situation. And the reason why this is good news is because if you wait long enough, I feel like we're going to see something out of R.J., but I don't think the shift is going to happen yet. If Ingram is out, we might be able to see a better opportunity of RJ in that Joker role, because I hope that's what happens in the future. But I'm not plugging RJ Harvey into my lineup confidently just yet. Courtland Sutton, I already said I'm going to start the man, but he is the only wide receiver option that I would be comfortable starting. He played almost 100% of the Broncos' offensive snaps. He was involved in almost every personnel grouping that needed a wide receiver. He is going to be on the field. He's going to be getting opportunities. The other wide receivers going to be benched for me. Outside Sutton, the usage for everybody else was just based on a rotation. I thought Marvin Mims maybe would be the wide receiver 2, but that didn't happen. Troy Franklin actually looked like the wide receiver 2. He saw more opportunities than him. Either way, I'm not starting either of these guys. Maybe Sean Payton is trying to figure out who the true wide receiver 2 is by rotating them. But right now, it is too much of a mix for me to start anyone but Cortland Sutton, Bo Nix. I think he's going to have a bounce back. And then J.K. Dobbins, again, if you need a running back from a fringe starter perspective. The Eagles versus the Chiefs. The over-under total for this game is 46.5. Again, a very high over-under total. Philly is projected to score 23.5 points. Kansas City is also projected to score right around 23.5 points. We have another game with 2 elite offenses with 2 good defenses. We have seen these types of games over literally the past week lead to shootouts and lead to high-scoring affairs. I'm going to roll with it. I'm riding with that trend. I'm starting Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. I am not worried about week 1. I am plugging A.J. Brown into my wide receiver 1 slot to make him feel confident and let him know I believe in him. If you have A.J. Brown and he's not in your wide receiver 1 spot, plug him in there. You show him some love. Let him know that you believe in him as your wide receiver 1. Sometimes he needs a boost in morale, right? Trent McDuffie is an elite corner, but he does not shadow receivers typically, so I'm not heavily worried about him for AJ, simply because he's going to be moving all over the field. Devontae Smith, I would consider benching. We have another potential shootout, a matchup that should be high scoring. I'm firing up Devontae. A little bit more hesitation than AJ Brown. But again, I'm still firing up my guy, wide receiver 2. If we see another situation like we did in week 1, then you got to feel a whole lot less confident about those two moving forward. But I'm not quite there yet personally. Dallas Goedert is a streaming tight end option this week. He will see his 4 receptions for 40 yards, just like he normally does, and anything else will be icing on the cake. We have another high-scoring affair. He is upside for another week. If you picked up Goedert in week 1 when we talked about him being a streaming option, you got a juicy matchup for week 2. You're just rolling with Goedert at this point. For the Chiefs, we're moving into Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Absolutely must starts. Kelce wasn't as involved and I expected him to be from a target share perspective, but he was in on 83% of the offensive snaps and he still had targets schemed just for him. I will continue to consider him a start until I believe those opportunities have dried up. He's on the field and he should continue to get design targets. With Worthy's injury now and Rice gone, Hollywood Brown blew up in week 1. I will be starting Hollywood Brown. I picked him up. I will be starting him over some of my other starters on a couple of my teams. Juju Smith-Schuster can also be considered a fringe starter, I would say, which again doesn't sound exciting to say. These two are much more riskier plays in this matchup, but Kansas City doesn't have other people to throw to. Hollywood Brown is my favorite of these two because he played 25 snaps out of the slot, and he only had 1 more ahead of Kelce. He seems to be put into the Rashid Rice role, which we have seen be extremely valuable. If you got Hollywood, I'm firing him up for this game, absolutely. I am going to bench Isaiah Pacheco for now. Again, you should have better options to choose from, but his offensive snap usage was just gross. Kareem Hunt was almost as involved as Pacheco was in week 1. While this is Pacheco's backfield, they just didn't seem to utilize him as frequently or as much, which could have been to do with game script. And this might follow similar to this Philly situation. I'm not firing up Pacheco confidently. If you have other options, look that way. Next up, we have the Falcons versus the Vikings. Starting off with the Falcons, I am not sold on Michael Penix Jr. I will be benching him until I see more. He had a rushing touchdown, which is absolutely insane to see since he ran for a total of 134 yards in 6 years of college. It's just crazy that he had a rushing touchdown in his first official big start of the season. He was 22 of his 27 completions were on 9-yard passes or shorter. He just benefited from yak yards, and with the potential wide receiver injuries, I'm just not risking him in week 2. Bijan Robinson and Drake London, if healthy, obviously are must starts. Darnell Mooney gets elevated to a start if London is out. If both London and Mooney are out, Casey Washington and Ray McLeod are interesting. You probably have better options to choose from, but just Nate, think about those guys if you're really in desperation mode in week 2 for wide receivers. If London and Mooney are out, those two, Casey Washington and Ray McLeod, could be interesting. If I was absolutely desperate and choose between the two, I would probably go with Ray simply because he has more of a consistent role in this offense that we has in the past. Casey Washington did see the most snaps. He just didn't get targeted. If London or Mooney are out of this game, if either of these are out, I am going to go ahead and say Kyle Pitts is a streaming tight end. Of all of 2024, Pitts saw his 3 highest offensive snap usage last week. He had 21 snaps out of the slot, which was only 3 behind Raymond McLeod. He should be involved because of a lack of options and a prime streaming option if you need a tight end. I would start him over Mark Andrews. Sounds gross, but if those injuries are going to happen, I would fire him up over Andrews. Moving into the Vikings, J.J. McCarthy is staying firmly on my bench. He came on strong last week, and I do believe that he will find value as the season progresses, but I'm not ready to plug him in just yet. There are other better streaming options that you should be able to feel more confident about. I'm not ready to do that just yet for JJ. Justin Jefferson, obviously starting the man. Adam Thielen and Jalen Naylor are both bench guys for me. TJ Hawkinson was limited last week by game script. He saw plenty of offensive snap usage. He ran 3rd most routes on the team, and they should still need him with Addison out. So TJ currently falls into my start category. I'm not super excited based on week 1 as I was before the season, but I'm expecting a bounce back. Now let's talk about the running back room with Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. Jordan Mason seemed to just command the early down snaps and usage early in the game. But as time went on, we saw a much closer to a 50-50 split. At this point, I am not starting either of these running backs in this running back room due to the timeshare that we saw. If I had to own one and I had to choose one, Jordan Mason would be the one, simply because his age as well as the way we saw last week go with him being the main guy. And I think he will be the better long-term option. This is going to be a running back by committee, probably touchdown dependent backfield. I would avoid it if I could. The Giants versus the Cowboys. The over-under total for this game is 44.5 points. The New York Giants have over-under of 19.5 points projection. Dallas has a massive 25.5 point projection. While most people wouldn't think this, Vegas included, I believe we have a very interesting game on our hands here. Last week, the Cowboys allowed Ertz to have an insane average time to throw of 3.67 seconds because they couldn't get any pressure on the quarterback. The Giants had one of the pass rushing units in the league coming into week 1. Last week, we saw the Rams dominate the Texans because of a good D-line and a bad offensive line. We might see this happen again with Dak, but it's also the Giants. So let's curb our optimism a little bit. It's just something to note. For the Cowboys, though, CeeDee Lamb, smash start, monster performance. Even though he dropped a bunch of balls, he still got the job done for you. Dak Prescott is not facing the Philadelphia Eagles defense, so he is also a streaming QB option for me this week. Outside his fantasy stat line last week, he played really well as a quarterback. He had solid metrics. He tried to push the ball downfield consistently. The team utilized pre-snap motion to help open up the field for him. We saw that the drops went on in week 1, and I think Dak has a fantasy bounce back game in week 2. The Giants also run man defense at one of the highest rates in the league. Dak typically plays exceptionally well against man defense. Javonte Williams is the running back 1 for Dallas and saw a 77% running back snap share. I am putting him into my fringe starting category. I'm still considering him around a running back 3 range, maybe running back 2 upside if he can find the end zone. He should be on a high-powered offense. He should see opportunities. I think he maybe is a little bit more touchdown dependent than most running backs, which is why I have him a little bit lower. If you need a running back, you took him late. Looks good. George Pickens is a tough one for me, but he is in my start category. Last week, he was option 3 on his team. He lost passing attack to Turd Ferguson. CeeDee Lamb was obviously the main guy. However, he was almost tied with CeeDee on passing snaps and routes run. He is super involved in the game script. It might take him a little while to build rapport with Dak, which is probably the case, But if I have him and I needed a wide receiver, I would fire him up. If you got Hollywood Brown, though, off waivers, I'm starting Hollywood Brown over Pickens in week 2. Week 1 isn't scaring me away for George Pickens. He's still a starter on my list, especially going up against the Giants. I think we'll see more opportunities this week to make him fantasy relevant. Turd Ferguson. He's going on my bench again. He should be option 3 in this offense. He should be. Even though we didn't see it last week, he should be. With Javonte now involved, he may even be option 4. There's better streaming options. I already talked about one. I'm benching Jake Ferguson. Moving over to the Giants. I am benching Russell Wilson, as there will be better QB streamers. Daboll is already getting asked about starting a different quarterback, and it is week 1. Just with the QB room situation, there's already rumblings. I just don't want to start a guy that maybe gets pulled in the second quarter because of bad performance. I don't think that'll happen. There's always that chance with how that quarterback room is situated and the pressure that he's already seeing. I'm starting Malik Neighbors, absolutely smash start. I am benching every other Giants wide receiver and tight end. Tyrone Tracy is a little bit more interesting. Will continue to be a fringe starter for me, just like Javonte Williams, but for different reasons. Tracy obviously isn't on a dominant offensive team, but he is heavily involved in the passing opportunities. He ran as many routes as Theo Johnson did in week 1. He played for 76% of the running back snaps, and he's their running back 1. A guy that I would consider in that running back 3 territory with running back 2 upside. He has much better pass catching potential than most other running backs. I still think he is a fringe starter for me going into week 2. The Seahawks and the Steelers. The over-under for this game is 39.5 points. The Seahawks have a 19.5 projected over-under. Pittsburgh has a 20.5 projected over and under. For the Seahawks, Sam Darnold, Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet, Cooper Kupp, Corey Holt, and A.J. Barner are all on my bench. I'm benching every single one of these guys. Before you're like, what are you talking about? Let me explain my logic here. Okay. So I was low on Darnold coming into the season. His performance in week 1 obviously didn't help his case as QB. Again, better streaming options. Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet saw a split backfield. Sharb actually took the majority of opportunities. I'm still not giving up on Kenneth Walker, but if I had the option to bench these two, I would. I think it's just a punishment for missing too much preseason. But right now, we need to kind of take a wait and see approach. You could potentially plug either of these guys in and say, all right, let me try to get value, but I'm avoiding them if I have the option to avoid them. Cooper Kupp was more involved than JSN. Yes, Cooper Kupp was more involved than JSN. He just didn't see any target. Continue to monitor this man. He isn't in my starting lineup, but all it's going to take is 1 week of this guy seeing 6+ targets, and he's a top wide receiver ad. Just keep an eye on Cooper Kupp. Obviously, Torrey Holt's still floating out there as well. Kupp, I think, is the one that's more involved at this point, so he's the one to be eyeing. I will be starting JSN. He should be lined up against Jerry Porter Jr. almost the entire game, who just got shredded by Garrett Wilson. Aside from that, JSN saw a 60% team target share last week. While that isn't realistic, obviously, to sustain, I'm not starting a wide receiver who is just hyper-focused on this team. Roll with JSN. Feel good about plugging him into your lineup. Moving over to the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers is a bench candidate. He had a fantastic week 1. But I don't see this being a favorable game script for him. There are just better options at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers does not have rushing upside. He's going to be reliant on throwing 3 touchdowns a game to be a fantasy producer. I'm just not there yet on him, even though he had a great week 1 performance. Kudos to Rodgers. But other options this week I'm looking towards. Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell are both indefinitely bench players. We saw a split backfield in week 1. It was almost 50-50, which we should continue to see. Avoid every tight end while Arthur Smith is in town. It's never worth the risk. This man is enjoying himself, but don't start any of those tight ends if you can help it. The reason why is because Arthur Smith rotated his tight ends. All game, there was a rotation. None of them were predominantly on the field at any one specific time. Obviously, Jonnu got that rushing touchdown. Just avoid the tight end situation. DK Metcalf, locked-in starter for me. He has a favorable matchup this week against Tariq Woolen, who he should be lined up for about half of the time, if not more, based on how they used him. He should also see plenty of targets and plenty of opportunities. Calvin Austin, for right now is a bench candidate. And the reason why is because he has a tougher matchup this week against Witherspoon, the cornerback. I just don't see the Steelers putting up another 30-point performance. He's somebody to keep an eye on. I'm just not firing him up, not feeling confident. There was plenty of waiver options outside of it and other streaming wide receivers that I feel are better options moving into this week 2. So I'm benching Calvin Austin. The Rams versus the Titans. The over-under for this game is 41.5 points. The Rams over-under is sitting at around 23.5 points, and Tennessee's is sitting at right around 18.5 points. The Titans, I'm going to say this, have one of the better secondaries in the league. Their cornerback core, I feel like, is pretty solid. People just need to remember this as the season's progressing. I know it's the Titans, but just be mindful that they do have a better secondary than most in the league. Don't just automatically sell because it's the Titans and you think, oh, I'm starting everybody. With that said, though, I am starting Puka Nacua for the Rams, Devontae Adams, Kyren Williams. These three should continue to be starting options. Even though we saw a tight end touchdown last week, these three made up for 73% of the entire team's opportunities. The offense runs through just these three players. Matthew Stafford is also on my lower end of my streaming quarterbacks, but he is an option. The Titan secondary is good, but the reason why is because Stafford is amazing, very good against zone coverage. And the Titans run zone at a top 10 rate in the league, which pumped Stafford up a little bit more for me, as well as Puka and Devontae, because he should be able to shred that and situate it. As far as the tight ends go on the Rams, again, waivers. They're on waivers and bench forever. If you have a tight end for the Rams, go out and find somebody else. McVay doesn't run through his tight ends. Even if you go back past 8 years and look at tight ends, there's never been a super dominant one. Moving into the Titans, Cam Ward is a bench candidate. I honestly feel bad for Cam because he is going up against some of the better defenses early in his career. The Rams have a crazy good pass rush, and they should really terrorize him all game. This is not great for a rookie quarterback coming into his second game. Tony Pollard will continue to stay in my smash start category because of his insane volume. Calvin Ridley is also a fringe starter wide receiver. He does not have a bad matchup on the defensive side of the ball. He should be targeted plenty, and as long as Ward can give him some catchable targets, he should be able to make a fantasy relevant performance. Calvin Ridley is still wide receiver 1 in this offense. Don't get it twisted because of week 1. Moving into Alec Amon-Ra, I know I said that wrong, is a rookie to monitor. We saw him targeted heavily in week 1 because Patrick Surtain was shadowing Calvin Ridley. They had to go in a different direction. Don't stress. Ridley's the wide receiver 1. Not many teams can support top 230 wide receivers. Same with Chig. He saw plenty of playing time in week 1, but he's still the 3rd or 4th option in this offense that we really don't expect much from. I'm not starting him in week 2 either. Moving over to the Bills and the Jets. Are we about to witness the greatest rushing game that we have seen between two teams all year? This is the team to do it. The Bills, Josh Allen, James Cook, smash starts for me. No questions asked. Dalton Kincaid will be a bench candidate until something changes with his snap count. If you are a Kincaid truther, I am very sorry to say that he only played 50% of the offensive snaps in week 1. That was a shootout. This is really bad news. If he doesn't improve, he isn't someone I'll even consider, so that is not good. Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakur, and Joshua Palmer are all sitting on the bench for me. I need to see more from this Bills offense to confidently plug them into my lineup. Last week was insane. It's just not a good assessment of what we've seen from this Joe Brady offense. I'm not hanging my hat on that. I need a couple games to really feel these three out. If you have better options, go them. If you had to choose one, I am still riding with Khalil Shakur. I think he's more involved in a typical Bills game script. Obviously, Keon Coleman got a ton of opportunities, but this game is going to be very different than last week. I'm riding with Shakur if I'm looking for PPR points or even half PPR. Keon Coleman has better touchdown upside. I will say that. Moving over to the Jets. Justin Fields is on the QB streaming and starting list. We talked about having that QB 6 potential last week, and it showed immediately in week 1. His rushing upside is just unmatched. If you got him, You need a quarterback starter for this week. I'm starting him even against a good Bills team. Breece Hall is a fringe starter for me. Last week, we saw that he was clearly the most talented and dominant running back at the position, but he did have touches taken in the backfield. Hall ended up seeing 58% of the running back opportunities, which is still starting territory, but it's worrisome because Breece has to be super efficient with his opportunities, but he has pass catching upside. There's a give and take there. 58% is really on the cusp for me, unless you're in a high-powered offense. We did also just see Derrick Henry run through the Bills' defense, which does help Breece Hall case, but his Ravens, great offensive line. They've been dominant. Breece could literally end as running back 5 or running back 30 given the week. That's why he's a fringe starter for me in week 2 matchup. I am starting Garrett Wilson. We saw an insane 43% team target share. He will be the focal point of the offensive passing game, and he will continue to be a volume start until something changes. I don't see any of the wide receivers becoming a top dog in that backfield. I don't see Mason Taylor stealing significant opportunities for him. Yes, he might get more involved, but until we see any of that happen, Garrett Wilson, we're riding with that man every single week because of the volume we're going to see. As far as everybody else goes, I'm benching them for the Jets. The Patriots versus the Dolphins. The over-under for this game is 43.5 points. New England is sitting at 21.5 points. Miami is slightly favored, sitting right around 23.5 points. If you haven't noticed yet, I am the type of fantasy player that likes to use analytics and film and supporting facts to make decisions and recommendations on players. While luck is obviously involved in fantasy and you got to get it right, I put my personal opinions to the side and I try to look at things objectively. With that said, though, there had been anecdotal evidence that supports the implosion of Miami even before week 1. First of all, if you watched any of the Mike McDaniels press conferences all offseason, he just looked over it. He looked and sounded defeated in his pressers. As I was watching these, I just thought McDaniels was just being McDaniels. He's just being that same guy that he typically is, being down and making jokes and snarky. I don't think that was it. Tyreek Hill had his issues on and off the field. He's clearly not happy. He was visibly upset during week 1. I'm going off vibes here and what I saw versus some of the analytics that go into this. I am benching most of the Miami Dolphins players because of that. Tua is getting benched because of the state of Miami, but mostly because his performance last week. He was one of the league's lowest with a 22% pressure rate in week 1. This could have just been one bad performance, but I don't know. He just wasn't pressured. He had the opportunities. He had the time. He just could not actually get it done. Jalen Waddle and whoever ends up taking the tight end snaps are going to be benched in week 1 on top of a bad performance. We saw Tua spread the ball around a lot. Malik Washington was just as involved as Waddle and Hill. I think this actually hurts and curbs Waddle's upside and is why I'm leaving him on my bench this week. I am, though, however, starting Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane. Achane's a lock start with Tua healthy. Achane's combination of rushing and receiving upside is just too good to not play him with a healthy Tua. I'm starting Tyreek Hill because he is still the main wide receiver weapon on this team. And if he can see some better opportunities, just some out of Tua, he always has a chance to go off. I'm putting Hill in my start category for the Dolphins. Moving over to the Patriots, Drake May is finding himself in my streaming quarterback lineup this week. Well, it probably isn't the smartest play. The upside is Daniel Jones good week 1. May has a similar style in that sneaky running ability. Miami's defense should continue to be a great matchup for really any fantasy players. So I'm firing up Drake May if you need a streaming quarterback option. I am benching Ramondre Stevenson, even though he was the running back 1 and he saw the majority of the opportunities. But I am starting Trayvon Henderson over him. I have Henderson as a fringe starter. I just love the upside in this matchup. I could see him just taking one for a house call in this matchup and just exploding. I am willing to get a little bit riskier this week with the lineup because of that. I feel like huge upside that Henderson brings this week against Miami. Henderson also has the pass catching upside to fall back on. If he doesn't have that big house goal or some explosive plays, he still has the pass catching ability, and he's still involved in the running back game in some way. He should be serviceable even if we don't see that crazy pop off. I am benching every single New England wide receiver except Kayshon Boutte. All right. Booties is getting the start for me. Every wide receiver, including Stephon Diggs, rotated in multiple other wide receiver sets. They all rotated, but hurt me because Diggs lost wide receiver snaps to Mac Collins. It's just gross. It is alarming to say the least. The one wide receiver who did play the highest at 82% of the offensive snaps was Booty. If you are in a pinch, Booty is probably on waivers already. Maybe somebody did pick him up, but he could have another great game against a bad Miami secondary. You need a wide receiver streaming option. I think he is a great one and potentially better than maybe even a Deebo and Terry question mark type of situation. Don't get crazy on that one. Just things to consider with how involved Booty was in week one. Hunter Henry also finds his way to my streaming tight end list. He's maybe not number one on my list, but he had a huge increase in his role in offensive snaps. According to PFF, he played 92% of 11 personnel snaps, which is three wide receiver sets, and he was in on early downs at 93% and on third downs. On top of a bad Miami secondary, he's just a logical guy who should see plenty of opportunities, being that he's on the field so consistently. That's why he falls into that streaming option for me. We have the Jaguars versus the Bengals. The over-under for this game is 49.5 points. This is insanely high for an over-and-under. Jacksonville is projected to have an over-under of 23.5 points. Cincinnati, 26.5 points. Trevor Lawrence is on my streaming list for the week. T-Law, believe in the man. I never doubted him, even for a second. No, I doubted him all the time. But he faces a Bengals secondary who, again, we expect to score plenty of points on a mediocre Jaguar secondary. T-Law's upside isn't as good because of how he looked in week one. He was not very good in week one, but the fact that he should have plenty of opportunities to make plays and they're going to be forced to really pass the ball and sling it, I feel a little bit comfortable streaming Trevor Lawrence if you are in a pinch. Some better options out there, but he's definitely on that list. Brian Thomas Jr. Everybody's worried about his opportunities and worried about Trevor Lawrence and him connection. Don't be. Start Brian Thomas Jr. It's too early to be worrying about all that. He's still the best wide receiver on that team and isn't even close. Travis Etienne saw a 60% running back share of the backfield, and he dominated on early downs, short yardage, and 2-minute drill work. This is awesome. This is what we want to see. The running back 2 in opportunities behind him was Tank Bigsby. The problem is Tank Bigsby has been traded. ETN should see even more opportunities. He might be in the 70% running back opportunity situation in a high-scoring affair. He is on my start list. In super deep leagues, I don't know how deep y'all leagues are if you're listening, but LaQuint Allen, he might find PPR success this week if there's a lot of third downs. He dominated almost of the third down work. There is some capped upside there for ETN. I just wanted to mention that in case y'all are in some crazy deep leagues. Moving over to Travis Hunter, he also finds a way into my start list. Hunter played in all of 11 personnel sets, which are 3 wide receiver sets, but he was in on 0 2 wide receiver sets. So this caps his upside a little bit. But what I will say is he played 70% of the time out of the slot. Cohen did just say this week that Hunter would play more defensive snaps against Cincy, which obviously makes sense. But for me, he had plenty of scheme targets, designed opportunities. He is still fantasy relevant, and he still falls into that start situation for me. Moving over to Brenton Strange at the tight end position. He is a deeper streaming option this week for me at tight end. If you are desperate, he has benefited from a huge increase from 2024 in his opportunities. He clocked a 78% offensive snap rate in week 1. In 2024, when he broke the 82% threshold, he averaged 11.5 PPR points a game. If we see him on the field just a little bit more consistently, he could be a great fantasy producer at the tight end position. We expect a heavy pass offense game script for this game. This is why he moves up a little bit into my streaming option. He does have potential to do well in this matchup. Moving over to the Bengals, I'm starting Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Chase Brown. Not saying too much about that. Start those guys. Start your studs. Mike Gesicki is staying on waivers until T. Higgins gets hurt. His time will eventually come this year to shine. At some point, you're going to hear me tell you to start Gesicki, but until then, we just wait and we leave him on waivers. The Niners versus the Saints. The over-under total for this game is 3.5 points. San Francisco is over-under is 23.5, and New Orleans is an abysmal 18.5. This is a game that we will need to monitor closely all the way up to game time. Brock Purdy and Juwan Jennings are both questionable for week 2. Kittle is out for the next 4 to 6 weeks, which means these targets do have to go somewhere. If Purdy can play, based on his injury designation, he should start against a terrible Saints team. It's a little risky because he might be injured, but if he does play, you plug him into your lineup as a starter, assuming he is healthy and he's not going to be pulled from the game for being injured. Without Brock Purdy, though, Ricky Parcel becomes a poor man's Chris Olave, to me anyway. He would see terrible targets without Purdy. He would need very high volume. It's sad to see because it's such a great matchup against the Saints for the Niners. If Purdy can't go, I might look elsewhere, but if he can go, Parcel is definitely a fire up, a start that man. If Brock Purdy can't play, I'm potentially looking at other options. CMC is always a start if he's on the field. I mean, if all these guys are hurt, they're going to give CMC like 1,000 opportunities. He's going to see 100% of the opportunities on offense. I wanted to talk about this man. He's not on the sheet. I need to update this. It says George Kittle, but Jake Tongs, he is electric. And he's definitely available. I'm not starting this man, but I just wanted to talk about him. I'm excited about him. He looked good, and those Kittle targets have to go somewhere. I just wanted to mention it. I like the guy. Moving over to Saints, Spencer Rattler, Rashid, and Cooks are all bench candidates for me. Alvin Kamara is a start. We did see him have 2 targets last week, which is very low. Ellen Moore decreases the receiving efficiency for running backs everywhere he's gone, but we expect more than 2 targets for Kamara. Chris Olave is a start because of the insane volume. That's all it is. Juwan Johnson is also falling into my streaming tight end category. He played every offensive snap except one in week 1. I don't think he realized how big of a deal that is. He was on the field 97% of the time for offensive opportunities. The Saints have no other options at tight end because of the injuries. If you need a tight end, Juwan is a great streaming option simply due to volume. We know the Saints should be playing from behind, so he could be a streamer guy. And honestly, if you need a tight end, just pick him up and hold him for a second, even if you don't feel confident starting him yet, because the opportunity and him being on the field is just unmatched for almost any player, any tight end anyway, around the league. The Bears at the Lions. The over-under for this game is 47.5 points. Chicago's over-under is 21.5, and Detroit is a massive 26.5. In week 1, the Lions looked like a shell of the offense that we once know. Goff was one of the worst graded quarterbacks for the week. He barely ever looked deep. He didn't throw many deep balls, which was a little worrisome. Jared Goff drastically impacted this offense. The question is, will they bounce back? Vegas thinks they will with the 26.5 point total. But let's talk about the Bears first. Caleb Williams is a fringe quarterback starter for me. The Lions defense held the Packers to 17 points until the fourth quarter, but there is opportunity for Caleb on the ground, which we saw. Now that we've seen the new Ben Johnson's offense, I feel much better putting in Caleb as a streaming option if necessary. He isn't on the high end of streamers this week, but he does make the list because Ben Johnson is doing good things and scheming him good plays to be efficient with his passes. DeAndre Swift, I'm going to keep him in my low-end running back 2, running back 3 as a fringe starter for me. In week 1, he was the clear lead back, and it just wasn't even close. He saw 80% of the running back snaps. He should, again, be very involved in this game. If you need a running back, I'm starting him. He didn't finish well last week, even though he was very involved, but sometimes that's going to happen with these low running back 2, running back 3 options. He's a running back 1 on a team. If you need a running back, good option. Moving over to DJ Moore. He is still the guy. This is the guy I want to own in Chicago. Even though we saw Rome shine in week 1, I'm not giving up on a wide receiver 1 who is shown to be more efficient and a great pass catcher. Caleb needs to just stop airballing him and DJ will be fine. I'm starting DJ Moore in this game. Rome is a starter, but he is lower than DJ Moore for me. I am considering him a lower end flex play, maybe wide receiver 3 play this week. He will continue to thrive in the red zone. This is where we saw him thrive all last year. I feel like he's going to have some boom games with the touchdown production, but I just don't think he's taking over as wide receiver 1 from DJ. He's going to have to be more efficient with his opportunities. I'm just not all in yet on Rome. I did just get a notification that DJ Moore does have a groin injury or groin thing happening. If he can't go, Rome shoots up solely due to opportunities. Just be mindful of that. If you got either of these guys, keep an eye on it before the games start this week. Moving over to the Lions. I am benching Jared Goff. The week 1 performance spooked me. Simple as that. It literally had nothing to do with his actual fantasy performance. It had to do with his actual QB play. I'm leaving him on the bench. There was a lot of good quarterback options that we've talked about this week. And even though the Lions are supposed to have an elite offense, I'm just pausing that until we see Goff actually come back. Jahmyr Gibbs is a smash start. Gibbs owners, you should rejoice. The fact that he saw 70% of the running back snaps is just chef's kiss. Beautiful. It might have been a game script, but he had a much larger role this week than he did all of last year with Monty healthy. So it's just telling you something how involved they want this man to be. I am benching David Montgomery for the same reason that I did last week. Until we see the Lions support 2 fantasy relevant running backs, I'm not starting Monty. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Laporta are all getting started. JMO saw his highest usage of his career in week 1. He was actually on par with Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you're a JMO owner, you got to feel good about that. The Bucks versus the Texans. We actually have 2 Monday night games this week. Be aware of that. The over-under for this game is 42.5 points. Tampa Bay's over-under is 20.5, and Houston's is 22.5. For the Buccaneers, I am starting Baker Mayfield, Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, and Emeka Mbuka are all getting started. Cade Otton is a bench candidate because he isn't needed. He's going to be touchdown dependent, and I don't like touchdown dependent tight ends, so I'm benching Cade Otton. But all these other guys are getting a start for me. The Texans, just like last week, I am benching CJ Stroud. Houston still, I know this is surprising, but they still have a horrible offensive line. And Tampa Bay just actually showed how dominant their defense can be with Hassan Reddick leading the league in pressures after week 1. He had 8 pressures. Yaya, Kancey, they just all played good and they disrupt the passer. I am very worried about CJ that we're going to see another high pressure rate game. He's going to run into issues to get the ball out. If you're desperate at a defense, the Bucs could be a little sneaky here. They might get some fantasy value by getting a couple sacks on CJ. Just noteworthy from a defense perspective. Nick Chubb, Pierce, and Woody are all getting benched for me, all for the reasons that I said above. If I had to play one, I would choose Chubb. He dominated the early down work and short yardage plays, but I just don't feel comfortable firing him up against that Tampa Bay defensive line. Jayden Higgins, Xavier Hutchinson, Justin Watson, Jalen Noel, Dalton Schultz, or literally Stover or any other of the pass catchers, they're all being rotated on the Texans. I'm benching every single one of them until we see somebody actually emerge as the true number 2 guy. Now let's talk about Nico Collins. This maybe even is why you're here, is for Nico. I am obviously going to start him in week 2, but I am a little worried because of that Tampa Bay pass rush. If CJ Stroud spreads the ball around just like he did in week 1, we could see another bad performance out of Nico. However, if he focuses Nico like he's done almost in every other game that they've played together, there's nothing to worry about. We're not freaking out about week 1 just yet. I'm starting Nico, putting him in. You drafted him as an elite wide receiver. Put him in as an elite wide receiver. Just like you do, put him into that wide receiver 1 spot. Well, I guess you can if it's a Monday night game. But put him there at least until the Sunday games roll, and then you can move him to your flex to have that flexibility there. All right, moving over to the next game. This is the last game of the week. We have the Chargers versus the Raiders, another Monday night game. The over-under total for this game is 46.5 points. The Chargers over-under is sitting at 24.5 points, and Vegas is 21.5 points. So starting with the Chargers, Justin Herbert is a start. They played one of the worst secondaries in the league in this game. They showed they are ready to use all their wide receiver weapons, and he honestly played like a man possessed last week. This matchup should be great for him. I am firing him up. I wasn't confident in week one, but he looked good. We're feeling better about this offense and the weapons that he has. Ed McConkey is still wide receiver 1 on this team, and he should be started in all formats. Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen can also be started, in my opinion. I think they're fringe wide receiver starts. If the offense just keeps kind of humming and producing, then this team, I know people were talking about the Cowboys, but maybe the Chargers are the 2024 Bengals. Maybe. Amarion Hampton crushed the running back opportunities. He saw 80% of the opportunities. He played all the goal line, all the short yardage. He dominated on third and early downs. People were saying Najee will ramp up, which maybe that's true. But even if Hampton can maintain a 70% opportunity share for this game, he should be perfectly fine to be started this week. Unless you think Najee is going to come in week 2 and be a 50% time split, I just don't see that happening in week 2. Moving over to the Raiders, Geno Smith gets elevated to a streamer for me this week. And this is why Geno is graded as top 10 in passing against 2 high coverages, which the Chargers run at 5th highest in the NFL. This should be an ideal matchup from a defensive scheme point of view. He will also need to ideally try to keep up with the Chargers. We should see a game script that favors passing. Genty is also a smash start. If you own him, don't even worry about week 1. He saw an absolutely ridiculous 86% of the running back snaps. He was involved all over the field. Just don't stress about the fantasy performance. Opportunities involved. That's what you want. Start Ashton Genty. Now that we have seen the offense and know what to expect, we can start Jacoby Myers. I'm feeling much better about that. He saw the elite level of opportunities just like he did last year. It's there. We know they're going to stink. We know their secondary is bad. We know they're going to have to throw the ball. Upside targets. Going to see opportunities. He's a starter for me. Brock Bowers, obviously a starter if he is healthy, but I would like to note that Michael Mayer saw more offensive snaps than him. Bowers ran the same amount of routes of actually Dante Thornton Jr. Just something to be a little bit mindful of. Obviously, Brock Bowers went crazy off last week, but did not matter. He's a starter if he's in. If not, though, then, you got to bench him because he's injured. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but you know what I mean. We're at the very end. I'm starting to lose brain cells here. Everyone else on the Raiders, though, I would bench. If Brock can't go, though, Chip Kelly might try to get crazy and utilize Dante Thornton Jr. to try to create mismatches similar to what Brock brings to the table. He could see an uptick in usage if Brock ends up being out, but this is a very, very, very deep start and real risky one. I'm not starting him. Just something interesting if you have super deep leagues. All right, well, that does it, everybody. If you like what you heard, give us a like and subscribe. If not, again, I just appreciate y'all hanging out and listening to this. As always, go steal a championship. We'll see y'all later.